afternoon, everyone. Good evening, everyone. From different places. First of all, thank you very much for such. You know, I don't. I mean, to be very fair, I don't really feel the kind of introduction you have given. It gives me, and I feel quite humble, humbled by the introduction. Uh, and also I feel a bit intimidated by presence of such giants in the subject to be speaking in front of them on this topic. But I'll try my best to kind of give enough fodder for thought, and also look forward to your questions. Now, before I come to the subject uh, and come to the book, I thought it would be prudent to give a very brief idea about how how the book evolved, or the making of the book from the trigger point and how it came to this fruition. It was sometime in 2009-10 when I uh, you know thought of when I was working on a subject, to choose a subject for my MPhil dissertation, that this idea struck me that it would be important to understand the Saudi education system. And this was mainly because of the ongoing debate at that time around the Saudi education system. Uh, and the debate was largely, you know, there was an inference that the education system is fomenting extremism. There was a lot of pressure on Saudi Arabia after 9/11 to bring reforms, apart from other areas, also in the education system. And there were steps being taken by the monarchy to counter such allegations, and to also introspect in terms of what are the problem areas, what could be done to prevent such issues, or to kind of uh, bring an end to problems being created by such issues. And when I first went to meet Sir, who guided me during my MPhil and PhD work, I had very vague ideas, actually, to be very fair, about the subject matter. And I had almost no idea about how I would be going up, I would go about doing research on this subject. And only, after discussions and continuous kind of debates, that I understood the magnitude of, the work I am going to undertake. But nevertheless, I did kind of, start working on this. So the focus of the dissertation, which was written over 2 semesters, was largely on how King Abdullah, who had become a regent in November 1995 and was de facto ruler since then, because of the health issues of King Fahd, had handled the pressure. There were two aspects to it, in my understanding. One was the pressure from outside, mainly the US after 9/11, to bring changes, to bring reforms. And there was a lot of resistance from within, from the entrenched sections of society, uh, uh, mainly from the clergy, the ulama, but from other sections as well, to resist any attempt at a serious reform. So how he found a balance between these two and navigated the situation, I argued, and this is again present in the book, in this book also, that he adopted a tried and tested uh, method of a gradualist approach to navigate this situation. He did not really kind of uh, started everything in just one you know kind of step. Gradual steps were taken, and it was not only within the education system that steps were taken, because the problem or the challenges emanating from various other aspects of society, of the polity, of this, of the nature of the kingdom itself, and the social structure, these were also kind of complementing or contributing to the problems with regard to the education system. And he also tried to take steps to address those problems, which I think has contributed in many ways to the to whatever extent the education reform steps have been successful, in my opinion. I think those steps have also contributed significantly in terms of that. Now, so mainly it was these, aspects that were discussed in the dissertation. But once I started working on my PhD, which was on a related subject on social reforms in Saudi Arabia, I also realized that the subject of education reforms is very important, is very significant, and there is a scope to further study the subject, to go deeper in the subject, and try and understand it more comprehensively. And that was, the trigger point in many ways in terms of coming up with this book. And then my fieldwork in Saudi Arabia during 2014-15 also gave me a lot of new material, a lot of new ideas. My visits to the libraries and universities, discussions with many people in Saudi Arabia, also gave me ideas in terms of how how the process was, undergoing the reform process, and how education, in a way, is the central kind of a point in terms of the discussion and debate within the kingdom on the larger reforms that was being brought in the society. So education system, the reforms in the education system was playing a very significant, a central role in the process of larger changes in the society which was coming in Saudi Arabia. And that kind of, so after a break of about 4 years, sometime in 4 5 years, sometime in 2016, once I submitted my PhD thesis, I undertook this work more seriously. And then in the last couple of years, once I was able to kind of come up with a manuscript, and then obviously I'm grateful to a lot of people, including Sir and many others, who were able to help me in terms of fine tuning the arguments and the text also. The two anonymous reviewers who actually went through the text and gave their comments. So it took some kind of 2 3 years from the from when I undertook the idea to kind of come up with a book and to its final fruition. I received the hard copy of the book only a couple of days back, finally. So now I'll come to the subject. I thought perhaps it would be, I mean, there are so many issues to discuss. It would not really be possible to discuss each and everything. So I thought perhaps there are 5 or 6 issues that I'll kind of try and take up it, broadly take it up, and then discuss it one by one, and then we can kind of look at it at the question answer session. From questions, we can take that questions discussion forward. So the first issue, excuse me, the first issue is what exactly is the nature of Saudi education system? How has it evolved? And perhaps I can also ask a question: is it a unique model, or is it something that is similar to what is followed in different parts of the region and beyond as well? So if one looks at the nature of Saudi education system and how it has evolved, one can say that there is a uniqueness to it. Uniqueness in the sense that first, in terms of how it has evolved, uniqueness also in terms of how it took a lot of time for the for Saudi education system to get exposed to modern ideas and modern education system itself, and also in terms of how the kind of emphasis or the kind of overwhelming uh, role of religion or or the religious leaders, ulama, it was there on the education system, how they had a significant role in shaping and functioning of the education system. So in that sense, it is unique. But then if one looks at the situation across the region, or especially in the Gulf region, it is similar to other parts, other countries in the Gulf. For example, countries like Oman or UAE. There also, the modern education system took some time before it was introduced in these countries, uh, mainly because they were not directly colonized the way many other third world countries were colonized, became colonies, and then, for example, in the 17th, 18th, 19th century itself, they got exposed to this modern education system through the colonial rulers. For example, in the case of Egypt, or for example, in the case of India, to some extent, also Iran and Turkey, even though they were not directly colonized as such, but they were more the exchanges between these countries and the Western European countries was taking place. So they were exposed to these new ideas, modern education system much earlier. So in the Saudi case, it was only in the later half of the 20th century that one sees that the modern education system starts to kind of take shape in a more organized and significant manner. Before that, it was largely the mosques and small kutabs that which were basically personality driven madrasas, which were basically personality driven schools at different levels that were imparting education to people, and they were largely uh, I mean, there were other subjects that were taught, but largely the focus was on religious education, moral education, ethical, issues, and issues related to theology. If at some level people wanted to kind of pursue higher education, only in the Hijaz region, because of the Ottoman, influence, there were some Ottoman type schools, Ottoman model schools, but there were very few, and only only elites and people who were emissaries of different countries living in Jeddah. They used to their children used to go to this school. Once the once King Abdulaziz started to kind of gain hold of the political situation in Saudi Arabia, in the Arabian Peninsula at that time, and kind of it became clear that he has succeeded in unifying the different regions of the Arabian Peninsula under one centralized rule, that the need for a organized education system kind of was felt. And the first time a conference, a kind of discussion was held, a larger discussion was held, was in 1925 conference in Makkah. There, the idea of the need for an education system, uh, you know uh, forming an education system, was discussed. And obviously, I mean, there were lots of opposition to introducing modern subjects, for example geography, or any other subjects like biology or other things, because of certain interpretations that were quite uh, prevalent. For example, the idea that the earth is not round but flat. So there were opposition based on this, or the idea of evolution, idea uh, interpretation against the idea of Darwin's idea of evolution, those kind of things were opposed. Uh, and this also led to a situation where while the uh, organized education started, but ulama became a kind of the responsible for the functioning and the planning of education. So, and this process continued until 1953, when for the first time the Ministry of Education was formed, and then the new system of school education, which was loosely based on the French model through the Egyptian model. So Saudi Arabia adopted the Egyptian model, but again, Egypt had adopted French model of 6+3+3 system of school, and that was kind of adopted. Now, if one looks at but from 1953 onwards, Saudi Arabia had also started to have enough, revenues generated by oil, sales of oil, that some also percolated into the development of infrastructure. So schools were being opened largely, until 1961, only boys' school. From 1966, early 1960s onwards, because of the influence of King Faisal and Queen Ifat, that female education schools for girls were also started. So this is how the process started. So it was not until 1950s and 1960s that a proper modern school education system were introduced in the kingdom. The first, for example, the first university, the King Saud University, was established only in 1957. So even higher education kind of took time to start, and that is one of the reasons, in my understanding, that the late start is also one of the reasons responsible for the traditional nature of the Saudi education system. So it was not only the religious influence or the influence of religious clergy that the education system remained kind of uh, different in its orientation, but also because of the late start of the modern education. So that is about the evolution of the system, and obviously after that, it took some time, but 1970s, 80s onwards, one sees that significant kind of spread in the education, especially in school education. 1980s onwards, even higher education, investment in higher education started. In 1990s, for example, if one looks at it, there were some, we all know that post-Kuwait crisis, there were protests inside Saudi Arabia as well. And one of the demands of the protesters was need for reforms in the education. So, and that is where my second point is, that largely it is assumed that it was only after 9/11 that the reform process in Saudi Arabia started. So the trajectory of reforms is traced only after 9/11 in the larger literature, which after going through the literature within the kingdom, I found that that is not entirely true. The idea of need for reforming the education system was existing. It's true that a serious effort at reducing the extremist aspect of the education system, or areas which needed to be changed, especially in terms of hateful references towards other religious communities, for example, Judaism and Christianity, or even other non-Sunni or Saudi Wahhabi denominations within Islam, for example, Shias or Sufis, which was very pervasive. That also, the need to change that occurred only post 9/11 largely. But the need for bringing reforms in the education system to improve its quality, to make to make professional education better, to generate better human resource, was there before. And it was not only there in terms of the understanding of the ruling, elite, the monarchy, but also among the intelligentsia. There was, kind of, uh, uh, one can say that group of people who were educated either outside or within Saudi Arabia or in some other Arab countries like Egypt, Lebanon, which had at that time, at least in the 1960s and 70s, a much better education system. Uh, so these, people who got educated there and had found jobs, coming had come back to their country and found jobs. They were, kind of demanding a need for reforms. So that is something which needs to be, which in my understanding needs to be recognized. The second point is that yes, 9/11 was certainly, there is no doubt that 9/11, post 9/11, there was a much serious attempt was made to uh, not only rid the education system of uh, you know unnecessary things or problematic things, but also this led to a situation that the monarchy was able to assert itself in a much uh, 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 much assertive way. It was able to do what could not have been done before because of resistance from different sections within the within this kingdom. It was able to do that, even though, as I mentioned earlier, it adopted a gradualist approach, but it certainly was able to uh, argue in favor of reforms, not only in terms of, for example, changing the school curriculum or revising the textbook, but also more comprehensive reforms in terms of, you know, for example, uh, making education and higher education accessible to all sections of the society, including, for example, the minorities in the eastern provinces, in the Shia-dominated eastern provinces, or, for example, for women, which had not happened before. I mean, which had happened in a very limited fashion. So the monarchy was able to, do this in a much more kind of uh, comprehensive way. And this also, I mean, obviously, King Abdullah used the kind of existing social climate within the country, within the kingdom, uh, to kind of arguing for the need for reforms. A number of other initiatives were taken. For example, uh, uh, the national dialogue process, or interfaith dialogue process, bringing women also into the, for example, the public life, and many other steps that were taken to generate the debate I mean, a favorable climate for these comprehensive reforms. I'm not talking about the uh, how successful he was or how limited the reforms actually happened, but to make the climate for reforms, uh, itself was a task which was needed to be done. And in that sense, I think the rule of King Abdullah was very successful in terms of, one can say, the paving the way for reforms. And uh, uh, I think the what is happening in the kingdom now, in many ways, that period post 9/11 till 2015, that 15-year period, where the climate for reform was paved, is very much responsible for what is happening now in terms of religious reforms, or in terms of social reforms, or in terms of economic issues as well. To some extent, one should be, at least in my understanding, some credit has to be in fact, a large amount of credit has to be given to that period of time. Now, I'll come to the third point, and that is the what exactly were the major challenges as far as reforms are concerned, both in terms of what needed to be done and what were the problems or stumbling blocks in terms of achieving those goals. There were mainly two issues. I mean, I'm talking very broadly. Obviously, if one goes into the finer aspects, there are many issues, but there are two broad issues. One was the need for creating better human resource to reduce the unemployment among Saudi youth. That was the first issue. So improving the quality of education, and it was right across from school to higher education. The need for example, professional education, introducing new subjects, need for English education, need for science and mathematics education at the school level, reducing the, better pedagogical methods. For example, avoid, rote learning was very prevalent, like many other countries in the world. Other, issues related to lack of creativity, lack of discussion, lack of, allowing students to think for themselves. These are the kind of issues that were facing. Teachers were, not trained well. So these were some of the problems that kind of the kingdom faced at that time, and these were addressed, or at least steps were taken to address these issues, be it the Takveer program, which was started in 2005-6, or many other programs, teachers training program. There was a program which was started to send Saudi students abroad, so study abroad programs. Many such programs were started during that period. Programs for improving the kind of bringing some degree of autonomy, autonomy not in the sense of planning and policy making, but autonomy in terms of how education has to be imparted to schools and a little at the localized level. So those kind of things, steps were taken. So that was to address, and then professional and institutes were opened, technical institutes were opened to allow students to after school, finishing school, to get admission in these institutions if they are not interested in going for higher education, to increase their employability. So those steps were taken. Secondly, was the challenge of reducing the influence of, or reducing the, basically the amount of religious subjects which were there in the curriculum. And that was also done gradually. For example, first thing that was taken place was to first change the, introduce new textbooks. Curriculum was revised. Teachers were, brought inside, brought in terms of in the ministry, experienced teachers to kind of discuss these issues. Simultaneously, there was also an attempt to reduce the number of religious-oriented people, or people who had studied in religious universities, who were mainly theologians, to reduce their influence in the policy and planning at the education ministry level of the ministry. So these, and then there were also partnerships that were formed with outside countries, specialized, for example, with British, some of the British, the public schools, specialized in curriculum development and issues. American, and America, Australia. So these were brought in to for consultation purposes, for advising purposes, and that also led to kind of improvement, significant improvement, I would say, in the school and higher education. Now, fourth point is about the how did the population, how did the people responded to these changes? So, as I mentioned earlier, there were demands even before. So the response was overwhelming. I mean, largely it was positive. There were obviously pockets of resistance from various conservative sections of the society, but the larger population was very responsive and supportive in terms of uh, uh, the need to bring reforms and what the monarchy was trying to do at that time. And that, I think, also was an advantage which helped in terms of realizing what the goals were. There were also at this point of time a new younger group of ulama who were coming up, and they also kind of, there were a lot of churning going on within the religious establishment itself, or the religious section of the society itself, and that also kind of, you know, a section from that also kind of supported the steps taken by the monarchy. So that also has happened. Uh, so and then one of the things that also happened was the response or attitude towards female education. That changed significantly, and that process has started much earlier. But it was during this period from 2001 onwards and under King Abdullah that one can see how dramatically the female education scene in Saudi Arabia changed in a few years. So almost all universities started with a, established a female branch. Obviously, the number of female schools only for girls kind of multiplied significantly. So this also happened during this period, and that also in terms of shows how responsive the population was in terms of the need to bring reforms, and that was also very helpful. Finally, if one looks at what is the current situation, is education reform still a priority? What are the things which are still being done, or what are the things which are still needed to be done? Uh, I think, I mean, there is no way one can say that everything is now perfect. Uh, that is not the point. But to a large extent, Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia has been successful uh, in turning around its education system. So, for example, if you look at the best ranking universities and technological universities and institutions in the Middle East region, there are 5 or 6 are now in Saudi Arabia within, I think, top 100, in that part of the world. For example, King Abdulaziz University in Jeddah, or King Fahd University in Tehran, or the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, and many other, highly specialized institutions. There are subjects, for example, research in chemistry, research in issues related to petroleum and minerals, that has also increased significantly in the country. So those things have happened. And then there are obviously, as I said, the female education is one of the major turnaround can be seen. So these are, areas where significant improvement have been seen. School education has also improved a lot. For example, in terms of, several new kind of initiatives to improve the school education. The problem areas which continue to kind of remain are, even though the amount of religious curriculum has been reduced, it still remains. It's not completely vanished. So that, I think, remains an area where some work need to be done. There are also, uh, in terms of derogatory kind of sometimes, inferences to other communities. There are also, I have come across reports. I have not seen all the, I have not cross-checked, but certainly there I've come across references where those things have been highlighted. And in terms of pedagogical issues as well as quality of education, there is also always a room for improvement. And as far as the current, as far as the King Salman and Crown Prince MBS are concerned, they have also kind of not abandoned the idea of need for education reforms, and that is very visible, very much visible in the if one goes through the Vision 2020 2030 program and the kind of things which is going on. So certainly, if one can say, I've taken a lot of time to conclude. One can say that if one looks at if one compares the Saudi education system to how it was 20 years ago, it is a significant turnaround. There is a huge turnaround as far as how it was 20 years ago. It has come a long way, both in terms of expansion, accessibility, as well as quality, and at the level of school, college, university, so across the spectrum. But if one looks at and even at the regional level, so the institutions are gaining more prominence. But at the larger global level, the standard of education, which is desirable, I think there is still a lot of room for improvement, and that is one of the things which I have highlighted in the book. I think I'll stop here, and I'll be very happy to answer any questions. Thank you.